Bradford. Lawson was no stranger to luxury. As the CEO and principal founder of Lawson Global Ventures, he inhabited a realm of private jets, penthouse conference suites, and an entourage prepared to handle his every whim. The impetus for his sprawling empire stemmed from his relentless desire for success, a desire that had, over the years, swallowed much of his personal life. Where others saw extravagance and privilege, Brad often saw constant motion, unending noise. He felt stuck in a loop of analyzing profit margins, forming alliances, negotiating expansions, and entertaining high society circles. Under that glamorous surface, however, lurked a growing weariness. Even Brad's best friends rarely saw him unless it related to a business event. He was perpetually absorbed by tomorrow's crises or next week's negotiations. The more his brand soared, the more he felt tethered to his phone, pinned to his calendar, and stifled by the routine of always achieving more. Finally, after finalizing a particularly grueling deal involving an international tech acquisition, he realized he needed a serious escape. Not just another five-star resort or a friend's lavish villa. He craved an environment that offered simplicity, a genuine break from the usual billionaire bubble. He scoured various listings on a short-term rental site, ignoring his staff's suggestions of high-end, curated, super luxury experiences. Instead, he zeroed in on a small beachside Airbnb in an unassuming coastal town. The listing's photos showed a humble, sun-bleached cottage, a porch with mismatched chairs, and mention of fresh ocean breezes. It felt refreshingly authentic. Without overthinking, he booked it on an account created under his middle name, fewer chances of prying eyes or assumptions about him. A week later, Brad found himself turning off a narrow coastal highway onto a sandy road. The ocean spread out to his left, a glorious expanse of shimmering blue under the afternoon sun. Seabirds drifted overhead, and a comfortable hush replaced the city's clamor. He pulled up in a sleek rental car that belied his usual Rolls-Royce or chauffeur-driven limo. The modest cottage matched the online photos, its exterior sporting chipped paint, a small sign reading "Seabreeze Cottage" in playful lettering. Disembarking, he inhaled deeply, tasting the salty tang on the breeze. Already, tension unraveled from his shoulders. In place of formal doorman or obsequious staff, only a calm hush of surf in the distance. He felt a flutter of excitement. Maybe this was exactly what he needed. He let out a soft chuckle at the realization. A billionaire stepping into a cozy seaside rental, incognito. His phone beeped with a reminder about an upcoming Lawson Global Ventures board memo. Ignore, he told himself, switching to do not disturb. No business. Not here. Not now. He approached the cottage's sun-warped porch, noticing Samantha Pierce standing by the doorway. She looked about late 20s, wearing cut-off jeans and a sea-green tank top, her cheeks sun-kissed, hair tousled by the breeze. A cluster of small bracelets glimmered on her wrists, each embroidered with shells or beads. Her bright smile suggested an openness that instantly set Brad at ease. "You must be Brad Foster?" she greeted, referencing the alias he'd used. Brad Foster, an innocuous name less likely to ring alarm bells for fans of Forbes or Fortune. "Welcome to Seabreeze Cottage. I'm Samantha." Her voice sounded casual, free of the caution or reverence he often encountered from people who recognized him. He forced a grin, shaking her hand. "Yes, Brad Foster. Thanks for having me, Samantha. This place looked amazing online. Figured I'd get some quiet time at the shore." She gestured for him to follow inside. The cottage's interior was cozy. Whitewashed walls, seashell-patterned cushions on a wicker couch, colorful paintings of local marine life pinned up. The air smelled faintly of salt and lavender, an unmistakable coastal blend. Samantha guided him to a small bedroom with a wide window framing the beach dunes. "This is all yours for the next few days," she said cheerfully. "There's fresh towels, extra blankets in the closet, and a kettle in the kitchen if you want tea. I live in the back unit, so if you need anything, just knock." He set his duffel bag down. "Thanks, it's perfect. Honestly, I can't wait to unwind." Samantha's gaze flicked momentarily across his polished shoes, tailored trousers, perhaps curious about how a regular traveler afforded such high-end clothing. But she didn't pry, which Brad found a relief. "Well, I hope you love it here," she said. "This beach is special to me. My family's from the area, and I do a little side business to keep afloat while working on my art." Brad's interest piqued. Art? She shrugged with a modest smile. I paint ocean-inspired pieces mostly. Nothing big, just something I'm passionate about. He smiled, impressed by the sincerity in her voice. Art, a realm he rarely had time to appreciate. That's really cool. Thanks, she said softly. Then she motioned for him to settle in. I'll let you unpack. Shout if you need anything. She left him, footprints quiet on the wooden floor, the screen door closing behind her with a gentle thud. Brad exhaled, glancing around the snug bedroom. It was certainly a far cry from the grand suites at the Peninsula or Ritz. But that was the point. He felt a stirring of excitement at this new sense of normalcy, a chance to simply be. Over the next few days, Brad let himself sink into the cottage's easy pace. He rose early, trading the usual screech of city traffic for seagulls cawing at daybreak. A short walk led him to the shore, where soft pink dawn tinted the horizon. He strolled the beach, letting cold waves lap his ankles, or jogged along the damp sand to get a quiet workout. No paparazzi, no urgent calls. By mid-morning, he'd sample local eats, like fresh fish tacos at the open-air cafe by the pier, or a bagel from a bakery shaped like a lighthouse. Occasionally, a local vendor would strike up a conversation, intrigued by the well-dressed newcomer. He responded politely, omitting the billionaire background. Books from a local bookstore, Sandy Pages, became his new companions. He devoured dog-eared paperbacks about travel, adventure, or even romance. It felt liberating, removing the corporate reading list from his day. The hush of the ocean replaced the hum of stock tickers. Slowly but surely, he felt the tension that had coiled in him for years begin to loosen. Every so often, Samantha would appear, either working on an outdoor canvas behind the cottage or tidying up the porch furniture. She always greeted him with a wave and a bright, "Good morning." Over time, their quick chats became longer. She'd share local tips, like a hidden cove excellent for snorkeling or a newly opened farmer's market down the road. Once, she found him reading on the porch and teased him gently. "You're halfway through that novel already? Must be enthralling." He laughed, acknowledging that it was a treat to read for pleasure. Another time, she invited him to join her for a community beach cleanup. Caught by surprise, he hesitated, but found himself unable to resist her unbridled enthusiasm. "Sure, why not?" he said. The next morning, he found himself wearing gloves, collecting plastic bottles and driftwood from the shoreline alongside teenage volunteers and a few retirees. During that cleanup, no one suspected he was a wealthy executive. He was just Brad, picking trash and swapping jokes about seaweed. Samantha teased him for recoiling at a strand of kelp, calling him city boy. He responded in kind, joking how she shrieked at a scuttling crab. Laughter bubbled up, disarming him from the typical stuffy politeness or guarded defenses. It occurred to him how natural it felt, just living, not orchestrating moves or analyzing profit. A sense of belonging hovered, albeit tenuous, because he was living under a disguised identity. Yet it was the truest sense of belonging he'd felt in ages. Nights at the cottage felt magical. One evening, Samantha spotted him perched on a driftwood log by the shore, gazing at the moon's reflection in the water. She approached, carrying 2 steaming mugs of hot cocoa. The salty breeze tousled her hair, the moonlit sand glowing softly beneath their feet. "Mind if I join?" she asked, extending a mug. He offered a grateful smile, shifting so she could sit on the log. "Not at all, thanks." The cocoa's warmth contrasted the night's gentle chill. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the surf's rolling hush, a soothing soundtrack. Eventually, conversation blossomed. Samantha asked about his life back in the city, how he normally spent his days. Without revealing his empire or the scale of his wealth, he described a high-pressure routine, jumping from meeting to meeting, rarely pausing to breathe. He told her he'd reached a point where burnout was looming, hence this unexpected getaway. She listened attentively, empathizing with the strain of hustle culture. "I grew up here, so I can't imagine the constant bustle of the city. But it sounds draining," she remarked. He chuckled wryly. "It is. I sometimes forget what real quiet feels like, until now." He glanced at her silhouette in the moonlight. "What about you? You said you create ocean-inspired art?" Her eyes lit up, describing the swirl of shapes and colors she tried to capture, how the tide's motion or a swirl of sea foam might inspire a painting. She admitted she sold pieces online to a modest but growing following, never sure if she'd make it big, but content in her craft. I'm saving up for a bigger studio, she added with a determined tilt of her chin. It's slow going, but I love the sea too much to just uproot and chase the city's money. Sometimes I feel torn, though. Maybe I should get a stable job to pay for a real studio, but, she shrugged, I can't leave this coastline. Brad listened, a pang of longing lodging in his chest. What if money was no barrier for her, he thought. But he kept that impulse to himself. She was forging her dream, and he feared overshadowing it with his wealth. He found her unwavering passion mesmerizing, someone who truly let her heart guide her. They continued chatting into the late hours, shifting from casual jokes to glimpses of vulnerability. Samantha revealed she'd lost her mother young. The sea was her solace. Brad touched upon how lonely and cutthroat the corporate world could be, though he kept details vague to hide his identity. Under the starlight, they shared a sense of unity. Two souls from seemingly opposite worlds, connected by the hush of waves and the trust that sometimes blossoms in quiet conversation. When they finally parted, each retreated with hearts stirred, an unspoken knowledge that something more than a mere guest-host relationship was growing between them. Time in the cottage flew by. Each morning, Brad woke earlier, strolling the beach with newfound vigor. He and Samantha often crossed paths in the midday heat. Once, she invited him on a kayaking excursion around the cove. The turquoise water glimmered with sunlight, small fish darting beneath. As they paddled, they teased each other. He teased her about calling him city boy. She teased him for nearly tipping over whenever a wave slapped the kayak's hull. Hey, you never said the ocean was so wobbly, he griped in mock indignation. She burst into laughter, pointing out that the sea was always in motion, exactly why she loved it. Once they glided near a cluster of rocks, sea lions barked at them, curiosity shining in their whiskered faces. Samantha took pictures, enthralled. Brad admired her face lit with excitement, feeling a surge of affection. She seemed to relish every moment, each detail of nature's wonders. He recognized how rarely he just enjoyed. She was teaching him how. After kayaking, breathless and soaked from a playful splash fight, they sprawled on the sandy beach, letting the sun dry them. She told him about her father, who taught her how to fish, her mother, who used to sing lullabies with ocean-themed lyrics, shaping Samantha's love for the sea. He in turn shared carefully curated glimpses of his family, a father who set high expectations, a mother who never quite grasped his drive, though always supportive. He omitted the name Lawson, though, mindful of how that alone might unravel his disguise. As the days stacked up, their bond deepened. Quiet breakfasts turned into a comfortable routine. Shared lunches morphed into spontaneous cookouts on the cottage's little grill. Dinner chats drifted late into the night. He found himself yearning to reveal more of who he was, but each time he hesitated, afraid to break the fragile normalcy. Yet each day he delayed. The weight of his hidden truth grew, overshadowing the joy he felt around her. He realized he was slowly falling in love. Her gentle teasing, her unwavering devotion to the ocean, her readiness to help neighbors or volunteer for small community causes. She made him appreciate the simpler joys in life: sunsets, homemade pastries, random jokes about seaweed. She reminded him that not everything had to revolve around wealth or status. Could she love me if she knew the truth about who I am? The question niggled at him day and night. A short phone call from his CFO reminded him that eventually he'd have to go back. Board meetings, expansions, new partnerships awaited. The idea of leaving Samantha behind stung. She, too, seemed to sense time slipping away, occasionally turning pensive whenever they mentioned the future. They were forging an unexpected bond that neither planned, yet neither could deny. At night, alone in the cottage's snug bedroom, Brad found sleep elusive. He would gaze at the moon's reflection dancing on the waves, mind swirling with the intimacy they'd forged, the stolen glances, the brush of her hand. He recognized the thrill of new love, but with it, the dread of betrayal, if she found out he was a billionaire playing a part. He wanted to spare her the jarring shift in dynamic that usually followed revelations of his net worth. He recalled ex-partners who either grew starry-eyed with dollar signs or recoiled from the pressure. But Samantha deserved honesty. The more he postponed it, the bigger the potential fallout. He wrestled with the fear that she might see him as manipulative for not disclosing sooner, or worse, that she might assume he saw her as a fling. He read one of her short notes pinned to the cottage's fridge about local recycling schedules and leftover cleaning supplies. Something about her neat handwriting, the way she doodled tiny waves in the margins, made his heart ache. She was so genuine. He refused to ruin that. Meanwhile, Samantha noticed his restlessness. She'd find him staring at the horizon, lost in thought, or noticing how he deflected certain personal questions. She wasn't naive. He was obviously comfortable financially, from the brand of clothes to occasional glimpses of a high-end watch. But she never pressed, trusting that if their closeness meant something, eventually he'd open up. Still, an undercurrent of anxiety gnawed at her too. She'd grown attached in ways she didn't expect. He felt so different from the typical tourist, more thoughtful, more invested in local life. She worried. Would he vanish when his vacation ended, leaving her with an empty heart and the memory of quiet nights on the dunes? In unguarded moments, she found herself daydreaming about them painting a seascape together or exploring tide pools. Then she'd remind herself he was just a traveler with no ties here. If he had a powerful business life, it might whisk him away for good. Toward the end of his intended stay, a summer storm rolled in, abrupt and violent. Dark clouds gathered over the sea in late afternoon, lightning dancing on the horizon. Locals hurriedly closed shops, bracing for the rumored gale. Samantha secured her porch chairs, hammered shut the cottage's shutters. Brad assisted, adrenaline spiking at the howling wind that rattled the roof. Thunder boomed, the sky flashed. Rain hammered down in sheets, turning the world outside the windows into a blur. They huddled inside her living area, candles lit in case the power flickered. The tension matched the swirling conflict inside Brad's mind. Maybe this storm was the impetus he needed to bear his secret. They sat on the couch as the wind whistled. She offered him a soft, worried grin. If power goes out, we'll manage with candles. Worst case, we have a gas stove, so dinner's not canceled. He returned her wry smile, a swirl of nerves in his stomach. I can handle a little candlelight, but his voice quivered slightly, mind fixated on the confession he was about to make. A crash of thunder made them both jump. The lights flickered, then died, leaving them in flickering candle glow. The hush that followed felt heavy, broken by the beat of rain on the windows. He inhaled, bracing himself. Samantha, there's something I need to tell you. I've not been completely honest about who I am. She turned to him, confusion knitting her brow. I said I'm in consulting, but that's not the whole story. I'm actually Bradford Lawson, CEO of Lawson Global Ventures, a billionaire. Silence thundered louder than the storm. Lightning illuminated her face in a stark flash, revealing surprise etched across her features. She recognized the name, Lawson. Media often mentioned him among the wealthiest business magnates. Rain drummed on the rooftop as she processed his words. Finally, she managed. So you used a different last name? You're that Lawson? He nodded, shame washing over him. I was so tired of people reacting to me as a commodity or advantage. I wanted a real break, genuine anonymity. His gaze flicked to hers, bracing for anger or disappointment. Her voice trembled slightly. So all this time, you're actually a billionaire, and you didn't think to tell me? The hurt in her tone sliced through him. I know we only met weeks ago, but I thought we were connecting truthfully. He reached for her hand, heart pounding. I'm sorry, I never meant to deceive you. I was terrified that if you knew, you'd see me differently, or that it'd overshadow this. He gestured to the cozy living area, the unplanned closeness they'd formed. You're the first person in ages who treated me like a normal guy. I didn't want to lose that. Lightning flickered again. She sighed, pulling her hand away to run fingers through her hair. I get wanting normalcy, but I also value honesty. Finding out this way feels big. Her eyes shone with raw emotion. But I do believe you weren't malicious, just scared. Relief and guilt mingled in his chest. I promise, no more secrets. A crash of thunder punctuated his words. She searched his face, the candlelight playing across her features. Brad, she whispered, voice almost lost to the storm's roar, I care about you for who you are. But you have to let me in. No half-truths. He nodded, tears threatening. I will. I just hope you can forgive me. Her lips curved in a trembling attempt at a smile. Then she leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. The storm outside raged, but inside they shared a fragile, heartfelt moment, acknowledging the betrayal, yet also the abiding sincerity underneath. The storm crashed overhead until near midnight. Prostent. They remained huddled together in the flickering candlelight, exchanging quiet confessions. He told her about how stifling it felt to have people always wanting a piece of his empire. She recounted how her father's passing left her struggling to keep the cottage afloat, culminating in hosting the Airbnb for income. Tension lingered around the withheld truth, but a deeper empathy began to settle. By dawn, the winds receded, leaving the beach strewn with seaweed and debris. Shafts of golden sunlight pierced the clouds. Samantha woke to find Brad in the kitchen, making coffee. He turned, offering a small, hesitant smile. "You sleep okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, eyes still shadowed with the weight of last night's revelations. "Yeah, and you?" "Better than expected," he replied. "I can't thank you enough for understanding." He poured coffee into mugs, the aroma comforting. Together, they sipped, letting the hush of the post-storm morning cushion them. Gradually, conversation unfurled about how to move forward. She admitted feeling uneasy about his wealth overshadowing her independence, but also recognized she was falling for him, not his fortune. He promised to respect her boundaries, support her dreams only if she wished, and remain transparent. A gentle calm filled the cottage, reflecting the newly cleared skies. They decided they wouldn't let the revelation overshadow the genuine connection they'd built. They took a dawn walk along the beach, stepping over piles of kelp and driftwood that the storm churned up hand in hand. In the swirl of the morning breeze, they reaffirmed a cautious but hopeful commitment to see where this bond could lead. As the final days of Brad's Airbnb stay neared, they wrestled with the reality that he'd soon return to his corporate realm. Yet neither wanted to cast aside what they'd discovered. The question loomed: would they continue this relationship once separated by distance? One afternoon, they ventured into a bigger nearby town to gather art supplies for Samantha. Brad insisted on driving. In the car, they bantered, exploring each other's tastes, favorite music, childhood hobbies. He teased her about how she tested every paintbrush brand meticulously. She teased him for nearly having a heart attack at the sight of a buy two, get one free sale. But behind the banter lay deeper undercurrents. He noticed she paused outside a bigger, well-equipped art store, hesitating to share how badly she craved a more advanced workspace. The memory of her father's home-based studio weighed on her. He recognized her quiet determination not to rely on his money, which made him respect her even more. On the second-to-last night, they cuddled on a blanket under the stars, near a small bonfire pit on the beach. The flames crackled, painting flickering light across their faces. She snuggled closer, head on his shoulder, the distant roar of waves a lullaby. He turned to her, voice hushed. "I can't imagine leaving you, leaving this place." She bit her lip, eyes misty. "I can't picture you at some fancy board meeting tomorrow either." A sad laugh passed between them. Her heart hammered when he proposed she visit his city, see the world he inhabited. "I'd love to show you my environment, my offices, my philanthropic projects," he confessed. "Just see if we belong in each other's spaces." A flicker of hope lit her expression. "I'd like that, and I guess, if it feels right, we'll figure out how to juggle our separate worlds or unify them." They shared a tender kiss, the bonfire's embers swirling upward like fleeting sparks of promise. That night felt like a vow of sorts, an unspoken pledge that beyond the beach they would remain connected. The final morning arrived, bright and breezy. Brad packed his duffel bag in the trunk of his rental car, a heaviness in his chest. He gave the cottage one last sweep, the memories swirling. Quiet breakfasts on the porch, star-kissed confessions, her laughter echoing in the small kitchen. Samantha watched him with a tight smile, arms folded as if bracing against the ache of goodbye. "So you're off?" she said softly. He nodded, clearing his throat. "Yeah, got some boards to handle, expansions to oversee." He paused, stepping closer, gently cupping her cheek. "But I want you to come visit me, soon as you can," she swallowed. "I'd like that. I've never visited a city as huge as yours." He laughed quietly. "I'll show you around the good bits and my real life." He hesitated. Stay in touch, okay? Let's not let this fade. Her eyes glimmered with emotion as she nodded. We won't. Then, in a move that startled him, she pressed a small painting into his hands, a swirling depiction of the sea at sunrise. I finished it last night, she murmured, something to remember me by. Tears pricked at his eyes. He carefully placed it on the passenger seat. Thank you. Then, with a trembling breath, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a soft, lingering kiss. The sea breeze ruffled their hair, gulls cried overhead, a poignant sign of the ephemeral nature of this moment. They exchanged final smiles, watery with suppressed tears. He climbed into the car, heart pounding, and started the engine. As he pulled onto the sandy road, the reflection of Seabreeze Cottage vanished in the rearview mirror. The pang of leaving was balanced by a new sense of purpose. He had someone worth returning to, worth bridging worlds for. On the plane ride home, once he reached the nearest airport, he couldn't stop staring at her painting. The swirling blues and greens seemed to whisper her voice, her spirit, the lullaby of her beloved ocean. He began drafting mental ideas of how to integrate her artistry into philanthropic events, or ways to quietly fund an art space in her town without overshadowing her. But first, he owed her an honest, wide-open invitation to his reality. In the ensuing months, Samantha ventured to Brad City. Nervous yet excited, she stepped into a sleek penthouse that boasted floor-to-ceiling windows with breathtaking skyline views. She marveled at the hush of the elevator that soared them up 60 floors, ironically a far cry from the cozy cottage's single story. He introduced her to a few close friends, explained the complexities of his daily life, board meetings with multi-million-dollar agendas, philanthropic committees, swirling public expectations. She navigated them gracefully, her warm authenticity a balm to the stiff formality around them. Colleagues whispered about Mr. Lawson's new partner, but found her unassuming nature refreshing. Meanwhile, Brad learned to relish quiet weekends at her side. No lavish parties, just painting sessions in a modest corner of his penthouse she set up, or walks along the city's riverside trails. Their daily calls turned into deeper dialogues about bridging their worlds. He spent alternate weekends traveling back to her coastal town, soaking up the beach's carefree hush, helping her find local sponsors for an upcoming art show. Eventually, as the months passed, Brad recognized something deeper had blossomed. Love so profound that living apart was no longer feasible. Late one summer evening, he orchestrated a heartfelt plan. Under the guise of unveiling a new philanthropic venture in her coastal region, he invited her to the beach where they'd first grown close. The tide was at mid-level, the setting sun painting the sky in purples and pinks. A small path lined with seashell lanterns guided her to the spot by the dunes. Her breath caught at the setting. A simple wooden arch draped in local flowers, a few close friends from both of their worlds quietly present. He stood there, wearing casual beach attire, linen pants, shirt sleeves rolled up, his heart pounding. She approached, heart fluttering, suspecting, but not sure what was unfolding. He took her hands, voice trembling with emotion, acknowledging how her unwavering authenticity had taught him to value simpler, real connections. Kneeling in the sand, he drew out a velvet box, tears in his eyes. "Samantha," he whispered, "you changed my life from the moment I stepped into your cottage. You offered me the normalcy and love I didn't know I needed. I can't imagine going forward without you as my partner, my equal. Will you marry me?" Tears glistened on her cheeks. With a shaky laugh, she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Applause sounded from the small group of loved ones, waves gently crashing like nature's applause. He slid the ring onto her finger, a piece custom designed with swirling ocean patterns reminiscent of her art. They embraced, the ocean breeze and seagulls overhead anointing the moment. She realized that the billionaire who had quietly booked her beachside Airbnb seeking anonymity was now her future partner in every sense: heart, life, and dream. Under that golden twilight, they sealed a promise that began on sun-bleached porch steps, blossomed through nights of candlelit conversation, overcame the barrier of hidden identity, and found completion in the synergy of two hearts guided by the sea's unifying tides. From that day onward, they built a blended life, sometimes at his penthouse, sometimes at her beloved Seabreeze cottage. She showcased her art in a small city gallery, crediting the coastline as her muse. He, having discovered a realm beyond mere profit, shaped Lawson Global Ventures to champion arts and environmental causes near her town. Together, they navigated board meetings and beach storms with equal courage, anchored by a truth they'd discovered by chance. When hearts align with sincerity, not even wealth or waves can keep two souls apart.